Hi everyone, welcome to our first PeopleHR webinar. My name is Bethany and I'm a Customer Success Manager here at Access, and today we're going to be looking at getting the most from Essential HR in PeopleHR. Before I get started, I just want to make sure that you can hear me clearly. If you can't, please check your audio settings. If you do miss anything though, don't worry, we are recording this webinar and we'll send you the recording via email. If you have any questions at all during the webinar, please submit these in the questions box and we will also come back to you on these via email after the webinar has been run. The length of the webinar is going to be around 60 minutes. We're going to jump straight into the demonstration, which will go through communications and resources, leave and absence, time and attendance, additional employee information, reporting, and then I will wrap up at the end. So it's on to the demonstration run by Adam, our lead trainer. Over to you, Adam.
Hello everyone and welcome to this short PeopleHR webinar where we will be looking at how to get the most out of the Essential HR functionality. So first, I'd like to thank everyone for taking a little bit of time out of their day, and we hope to make this worth your while. And we're going to have a look at some features you can see listed below. We're just going to have a quick talk through and make sure that we are utilising some of these features if they work for us, because obviously there's no right or wrong answer. But hopefully the aim is by looking at all these features, at least some of them will stand out to you and hopefully improve some of your essential day-to-day HR ongoings and reduce some of your admin time at the very least. But hopefully we can do much more than that. So we've got a range of features to explore across a few different areas that we consider part of the Essential HR packages. So this will be functionality that all of our users can explore, regardless of whether you're on our professional, enterprise, elite package. These will all be features that people can interact with. Now, some features will contain some extra functions depending, but for the most part, we are aiming to look at improving everybody and their essential HR. So what we're going to be looking at, you can see, first of all, we're going to look at some features that help with communications and resources. Specifically, you can see I've got listed here is the news and the company documents features. So we'll look at how we can utilize them, if we're utilizing them at all, whether we use them to a certain degree to help improve slightly, or whether we want to maximize functionality of those features to really enhance our experience. And after that, we're going to have a little glance at how we manage leave and absence. Excuse me. Now, rather than just your standard leave and absence, obviously we know how holidays is going to be managed, and we assume that most people are going to be adopting day-to-day annual leave. But there are some other features, such as other events, that we can explore to really enhance how much leave and other sort of instances we might want to capture, and the rules around them. But speaking of, we are going to look at sickness as well anyway, because as well as capturing sick, there is sometimes a little bit more we can do using the system's functions to not just capture it, but to do that in as best a way that we can and still have a nice experience for our employees and managers. As well as that, we also have some very flexible authorization rules in PeopleHR that, a surprising amount of people aren't utilising potentially to the best of their ability. No fault of their own. Sometimes it's just not being aware of these features. We're adapting things all the time. And sometimes it's simply, it works for them at one time, but the company's moved on and things have changed. And we might not have always gone back and looked at our authorization rules to reflect what we currently do as a company. So we'd like to look at how we manage authorizations and how flexibly we can adapt our rules to suit exactly how we work, rather than having to force how we work to system standards. Beyond that, we're also going to have a little look at some time and attendance functionality today. And again, you may very well be capturing timesheets regularly, and you may be capturing them exactly how you need to. But we want to explore some functions today just to make sure that if we can make that a little bit easier for people or improve on that in some sort of way, then you are aware of the options that exist. As well as that, we're also going to look at some additional employee information. So what do we mean by that? It's rather brief, but we actually are going to look at specifically two segments of the system that relate to this, logbooks and document templates. And again, if you're here today and you're already using some of these functions, then we can always potentially look at getting a little bit more out of those, maybe highlighting some things you weren't aware of. And if you've never, come across these, or maybe these are, looking at these in the list here, you think, actually, I don't think we are utilising some of these functions, then that alone, we're going to explore some things that'll definitely be able to improve your experience today. But there'll be something for everybody in these sections, as we've mentioned. And that also goes for last but definitely not least, looking at the reporting side of things. We just want to really ensure that we highlight the functionalities within both the queries and the report sections, and make sure you're aware of them and utilising them however you see best, whether that's to a certain degree or to a really, really emphasised degree, to get exactly what you need out of our system. So, without further ado, we're going to go through in that order, and let's get stuck into the PeopleHR platform so that we can get going through that list, starting with communications and resources. So let's get going. So off we jump into the PeopleHR system. You can see I'm just sitting here on my home screen, my dashboard as an administrator, and that's going to be the profile I'm utilizing as we go through here. So a lot of the functionality we're looking at is really for an admin to put into place or to manage that will not only improve their own experience, but improve experiences across the board. So we mentioned first communications and resources, and to start with, more communications but can also be a resource tool, as we'll see, is the news functionality, which actually is a component of everybody's dashboard. As administrators, we can actually control the news feed itself. You can actually decide to share access to the news if you wish as well, so you can broaden the scope if you want to include others in this functionality, or whether you just simply want to keep that controlled to within the HR team. The choice is completely yours. But in terms of everybody else's interaction with the news, they're going to see what's been posted. So if we dive firstly into the news section, you can see large, rich news posts, rich in text, and various other things can be posted into here for people to see in a timeline sort of feed. So if they want to look back on this, once it's been posted, it's going to be there forever and always, unless you yourself as a HR administrator decide you want to go back and cleanse the news for whatever reason. Maybe you want to put temporary messages out there, but anything you post will remain in there. And it's good to mention that the news is also going to be available to users on their mobile devices. Now, as well as that, obviously posting news itself is a very straightforward thing. You simply have a straightforward editor you can utilize here. If you've got content somewhere else, you wish to just bring it in, you can just copy and paste across. Or if you wish to design something from within the news itself, you've got plenty of options to manage your imagery and to manage your files. If you want to have things attached into your news feed, you absolutely can. If you want to have detailed, rich amount of text, you can see from my historic posts, that's absolutely no problem. There's no size limit on your news posts. And the good thing about news as well is you can also go a little bit further if you wish to, utilize the HTML side and embed things like hyperlinks, videos, and other various media. So if you want to do that, we have tutorials in our help center on how to do so, and it will allow you to, as we mentioned going into this, utilize a little bit more of news as a resource where you can put links to things and videos and things that people can access and interact with to help themselves if they need to. Beyond that, there's also some great functions within here to manage posting. So if you want to decide that this is for a specific group of people, it's going to broaden the amount of news alerts and posts that are going to be relevant for different groups if it hasn't got to just be everybody. So you can narrow down your groups there appropriately. And what's really good as well is you can, as well as news being great for being separated from email chains and being its own standalone feature, it is good, and we do know that emails are a big important part of everybody's day-to-day. And if we want to get our important news out there as emails, it's simply a tick of a box and you've got a bulk email on your hands. So it's really, really straightforward, but some great function to have in your back pocket. If you want some actual engagement, that's another great feature of the news, is that you can actually open up the door for comments. So if you want to actually have another reason for people to engage with the system on a regular basis, but it's for a positive reason as well. It's going to give you feedback, it's going to give you people's open comments and thoughts and encourage people to be interactive with one another. And it might even give people a chance to communicate with each other that don't often work so closely, giving more interaction to the culture. So the news, great feature for putting key information out there for people, and if we're simply just using it to post information out, then fantastic. And it's a good way, as we mentioned, of separating information from the general email comms and regular channels that people might be used to. And if we want to put HR information in its own standalone place, or even to put some key information that people might want to be, aware of and even respond to, we've seen that with comments we can allow that. So that is a brief dive into the news. To find out more, we've got tons of content and tons of online learning materials about the news, which you can find out more by speaking to our customer services team or simply by exploring our help centre. Now, let's have a little dive across into the company documents section, which you can find here labelled on the left as documents. And we're going to be exploring this to follow on from the news, because as we mentioned, we want to look at not only communications, but also resources. And company documents does lean much more into the resources side. As you can see, you would upload by the title documents. And this can be done as hard copies, or if you go to add a document here, you can see you can also put links and URLs to documents as standard. So this is even more leaning towards being able to capture resources as hard copies or even online directories. So if you want to divert people to an existing online space, if you already store your documentation in an online format, such as a portal, OneDrive, Google Drive, whatever it may be. It might even be an internal portal of your own making. You can put the URLs to those appropriate areas, and it just gives one more doorway for people to be able to make their way through to that. And not only one, actually two, now that we speak of it, as you'll also get access via your mobile devices, be it a hard copy of a document or a link. So we're actually giving more functionality to those people who are mobile based, be it their preference or simply because they're naturally more on the go. So utilising company documents is really something we can do very, very easily, and it's still giving people a much nicer experience and allowing people to help themselves to relevant resources. A great thing we'll see as well is that we're uploading documents, whether it's a link or a file, we can actually decide between user groups, just like the news, and we can also determine even further than the news by defining if we want it to be manager-only access or available to all employees in the group. So if you've got any manager-only materials, again, a great place to store them. So we've had a little glimpse at both the news and the company documents. So as we looked at our original agenda, that covered off the communications and resources side of things. So now we're going to take a little look at the next section, which we mentioned is going to be the leave and absence features we can look at to utilise to improve our HR experience. And to do that, we're going to have to go and look in an employee's profile, because the area we're going to explore to manage these features exists within the employee planner. So to do so, let's go to the employee section and let's view an employee's profile. And as we mentioned, we want to visit their planner. Now, once you've visited an employee planner, you can see you've got all the various events that you can record. And we may very naturally, as we adopt the system, pick up immediately utilisation of holidays, timesheets, even sickness. And these are things that people are going to need to record quite regularly. But one feature that often isn't always adopted immediately, or even if it is adopted, not always pushed to its potential, is the other events feature. Now, other events is essentially, as it labels on the tin, an option to capture other details within the planner other than what we have pre-labelled. And when we look into the other events feature, all we simply have is a drop-down list of reasons, and we can simply manipulate that list to suit our needs. And as you can see by some of the examples I've got, but any examples you wish to enter yourself, you can have a variety of things such as study leave, jury service, training days, parental leave, and even things like appointments, like dental appointments, medical appointments, and a whole lot of other things. All you simply need to do is go into a single employee's record, it doesn't really matter which, and manage that list. This will only be available for administrators to do, but when they do, they'll be able to add as many items to this list as necessary, and they'll be able to manage individual or bulk entitlements for those events once created. So if you actually want to limit the amount of use people have of any event, you can do that either via their individual planner settings or via the bulk actions. Worth also mentioning that within the bulk actions, you can actually upload data to your other events from a spreadsheet. So if you want to get going really quickly with other events, you can actually just create a spreadsheet and upload the data into the system yourself. And in an instant, you'll have tons of information you can report on. So utilising other events will really broaden the scope of not only annual leave you're able to capture, report and see the analytics for, but any other type of leave or even just instances themselves that all amount to general absence within the business. And it gives us a much more true representation of details within our reports, as well as being able to manage those things on a day-to-day basis much more specifically and improve the overall planning within the business. So other events are a fantastic feature. Now, once we've decided what we'd like to do with other events, that also broadens the scope for leave. But when it comes to sickness, we can utilise the functionality within PeopleHR in various different ways. Now, if you're recording sickness, you may simply be recording it in whatever way suits you best. Or it may have been that you've set it up in a certain way because it suits you best at the time, but things change and we may want to, or may be in a better place now, to review how that works if we find that there are things about our process we may wish to improve. So it may be the answer is look no further than in your PeopleHR system. So all you have to do is look into your sickness records, and you can open up a blank one for any employee, just like we talked about with other events a moment ago, and you can review your sickness reason list. Now this obviously contains your specific sick reasons, but once you've decided that, you can actually go one step further and capture sickness verifications. Now before we do that, we can just talk about various ways in which sickness is managed, because any one of the following ways may suit you to a T, and there's absolutely no right or wrong answer. So first of all, let's just talk about sickness as it is. At the very least, you may be capturing sickness by simply going in, recording its duration, its length, its from and to dates, and choosing from a standard list of reasons. And when you do so, that's absolutely fine. And obviously the follow-up, there are some standard areas where you can capture the details. Comment section is a great area for keeping open notes and information about an absence. And of course, the manager can record any information they wish to. If they've had a back to work meeting and there's information that they want to capture for their own benefit as well as the employees, then they can store it all in here. It makes it available for them. It's private between them and the employee and of course the HR administrators. And then of course if there's any further documentation that they may have, such as a doctor's note or a self-cert document or even a preset company right to work document, they can attach those in there, and again they're just as available as the comments. And that process might be absolutely perfect for what you as a business need, and there may be no need to complicate that any further. However, if you do wish to seek a little bit more structure than those generic items there, we do have some options that can solidify that a little bit further. So that's where we go back to looking at that managed list. So if we just go into this managed list for this example absence, we can look at any individual reason and we can vary these options per reason, so not every reason has to carry much verification. Sickness can be carried out just as we explored. But if we take the reason cold there, for example, we can see a variety of different sickness options. We can see that we've got, first of all, manager review required. So that would supply us with a standard notification and an action that is required from a manager typically, but can be anybody who has access to the sick, to record that a review, a back to work meeting essentially has taken place and when. So that could be a perfectly valid option, and that could be a standalone option without any of these others enabled. And to do that, it wouldn't be any more difficult than simply going into the options tab on a sickness and recording that you've done a back to work interview. And as you can see, there is also the option to provide who carried out that interview if it wasn't indeed the manager. So not a particularly drastic action, but it does encourage that action takes place and does require a little bit of admin to confirm that that happened, which then gives us, of course, the ability to run reports on that within our PeopleHR system. Going back to the list, other verifications we have include certificate required, which does actually hold a little bit more weight than first appears, as similar to the previous option we just explored. And if we go and look at the direct action itself, it just provides in that same screen, the options tab, an option that states self-cert form required, and all we have to do as an action, i.e. the manager or whoever else is actioning this sickness, is record the date that that document's been received. And that more than likely would be physically received by the employee and uploaded to the file section, just like we explored previously. So it's just reinforcing that action with a little bit of admin that follows, which really wouldn't be too much extra if we were coming to upload the document anyway. That is an extra item in itself though, which we mentioned a moment ago, because if we leave that option as self-cert required and we actually extend the absence to longer than a 5 working day period, so if we just nudge this backwards ever so slightly to, let's just say, couple of weeks prior, this instantly recognises the length of this absence exceeds that requires now a fit note if we look back in our options section. So it automatically, with that verification selected, will move us on from knowing that it needs a self-cert to then knowing if a fit note is required. So that is a very nice option to have as a default, because then that is also what the notification to the line manager will update to. So it keeps things a little bit more formal, a little bit more rigid, but still obviously not too demanding in terms of additional actions if we're obviously already capturing this documentation and we don't want to stiffen it up with too much admin. So very nice to be aware of those two options, and again they're no more than a quick visit to the options tab, ticking a box and confirming a date. Now an option that does carry a little bit more weight is the third option, if we just go back into our managed list, which says return to work form required. Now this isn't like the previous two that simply asks you to provide a date to say you've done an external form. This is actually a pre-built form within the PeopleHR system that does have some specific requirements, but in all honesty does have a little bit more preset structure to it and maybe just what you need to get your sickness a little bit more aligned if that's something you've been requiring. So let's explore this standard return to work form and see if it works for us. Bearing in mind, if that it doesn't, we still have seen that there's plenty of options to upload your own form, and we are actually going to explore some features in a moment in today's session that may also give a little bit more customization. So without further ado, let's explore that option. So let's say we record this sickness with that option selected. All we'd have to do is, in this order, so all we'd have to do is, in this order, go into an existing sickness and visit the return to work section. There's two designated sections here. Section at the top is for the employee to complete, and when the employee does complete the minimum mandatory requirements, that will then send a notification to their line manager to complete their corresponding section at the bottom. At the top here we can see the option to say a doctor's consulted, although that is completely optional, but does provide more details to this form that the individual can then choose to complete. However, that is a complete choice. And then going beyond that, they can see there's a few more tick boxes near the bottom, the only mandatory of which is their declaration that if they wish to confirm they're sick and wish to resume work, they can select and they can provide a date with that. And that is the bare minimum of the employee requirements on a return to work. Beyond that, once complete and saved, the manager will be notified, and they can of course correspond with, if there is doctor's information, they may wish to respond with the medical information being provided, and then from there choose the correct option. If not, it may be as straightforward as simply selecting yes, they can confirm and resume work, and then dating it themselves. Once saved, the return to work form is installed against sickness. We can report that information, and we can also then easily see if any of those actions are outstanding. Now again, that is a preset form, so it may work to your liking or it may not, but it is also handy to know you've got that pre-built workflow, and if left outstanding, it will be then classed as an outstanding action that the system will continue to remind people they need to complete. So it saves a little bit of manual work from HR as well. So we take a little look at news and company documents first. We then take a little look at leave and absence features, some of which again might just simply take you from where you're doing now to improving that experience ever so slightly. And now we're going to take a look at some slight features in the general PeopleHR settings that review time and attendance. And specifically, we're going to look at if we would like to make clocking in and out a little bit easier for people, or even an option, and if we'd like to potentially explore geofences or QR codes, which I know can sound a little bit fancy at first, but it can be quite easily adopted in a matter of moments and with very little admin work to get going in the first place. So to do this, we're going to have a quick look in your PeopleHR settings, and we're going to look at two particular areas. We're going to look firstly at the mobile area, and then we're going to look at the timesheets area to make sure that we are optimizing everything we need to about the way that we capture time data. So first of all, let's look in the mobile section. I know it might seem a little bit strange to be looking in mobile timesheets, but this is really something that can greatly optimize our timesheet use. And we're looking specifically at these two options near the bottom. We're looking at timesheet on and off and mobile tap in and out on and off. Now, if we turn timesheet on and off on, that will actually enable us to capture assignments through our mobile devices. Now, if you're not too familiar with assignments, we're actually going to talk about them a little bit more, ever so slightly, in the timesheet settings. So if that doesn't seem like much to you at the moment, we are going to go into exactly what assignments are very shortly. But again, capturing them on a mobile device, great option to have, which just means we can be a little bit more specific with the time information that we capture. A mobile tap in, tap out. So that actually is basically enabling standard timesheets on a mobile. We just call it tap in, tap out because when this is turned on, it means that on your mobile screen, you'll see an option to tap in, which clocks you in, and tap in and tap out, sorry, which clocks you out. And that is, again, in and of itself, a very handy feature to have if you have remote people, on the go people, or you want to include a little bit more mobile use in the day-to-day. Now, if we were going down that rabbit hole of allowing people to clock in and out on mobile devices, then you might want to even consider having geofence locations assigned. So that if you've got those locations ingrained into your PeopleHR system, you can actually decide that people can only clock in when in location, so that people aren't clocking in and out at the wrong times, and to ensure that you're not making it difficult or easy for people to make administrative errors. So if you want to pop a location in, you can simply pop the details, name it yourself, use an address finder to find the locations within the system, and then you generate a longitude and latitude and draw a region around that location, which is the clock-in zone. And then with this feature enabled, when people come in and out of that zone with their mobile devices, they'll automatically clock in and out, or you can leave auto clock in and out disabled, and the people will just simply only be able to manually clock in and out if you've assigned them to a location. Equally, you can go one step further and order Bluetooth beacons that you can assign to that location. They're separately provided devices, but you can link them to a location so that people's Bluetooth on their mobile devices clocks them in and out when it reaches a beacon. Or you can use a free option which comes with your PeopleHR, which is you can assign a QR code to that region. So that makes it an item that they can scan on their mobile devices. You just simply click on the QR code section, go to add a new, and you can generate or print your QR code. Place it in an area that people can access when they arrive at the location, and they'll be able to just simply hold up their phone's camera to that, and that will clock them in, and the same when they leave. And this is all functionality that's completely included in your standard PeopleHR that everyone can start utilising straight away. Now, again, we appreciate that you might not be utilising, you might be aware of certain features simply because they're not relevant to you. But if there's any features in here today that is going to enhance that day-to-day experience of people, if they are simply capturing timesheets in a manual way, then hopefully that can improve that a little bit for them as an option. Now, regardless of the mobile use, we would also like to address the timesheet settings, and specifically within there, we'd like to look at these three lists: project, tasks, and detail, for when we're capturing assignments. And assignments, if you're not aware, are essentially timesheets that just have a little bit more detail against them, so that if we do have a variety of different projects or working types or rates of pay that we'd like to be able to assign our working hours to, then an assignment is a perfect way to do that. And the way to get assignments up and running is to manage these lists, and at the very least to manage your lists of projects, so that people can choose, at least even if it's not specifically a project of work, you can label something a project, like working from home, as you can see we've got listed there, like working overtime, like working in a different role, or of course you can see it like we have done, list literal project names or even client names, so that people can not only put their hours of work in, but what they've worked against. So a really great way to optimize people's time capturing and time utilage. So that was a little dive into the timesheets and mobile functionality when it comes to capturing time. So now we're going to have a look at the penultimate area, which is going to be additional employee information, before we take a little dive and have a look at the report side of things. So let's take a look at that area without further ado. And it's actually within the PeopleHR settings area that we're going to utilize these features. And the first of which we're going to look at is the logbook section. Now, the logbook is essentially an area where you can design your own screens with your own selection of custom fields against each screen to capture information however you see fit. And when we mean however, not only do we mean whatever order and display you want to capture that information in, we also mean across whatever group of employees/managers, because you can completely decide what the universal access is to each and every one of these screens that you create. So as you can see in my list here, there's a wide variety of different screens that, as you can probably guess by their titles, have different purposes and what they capture. And what we can do here in the settings is actually manage, design, and allocate access to various screens. So it sounds like it can be a whole lot, but in reality, it's actually very straightforward, and you can utilize all of these additional custom screens to a very minimal use if that's what suits you, or you can really enhance the utilage in your system by having a great many screens in here that do a great many different things. And it might not be that you need hundreds of screens, but it might be that a handful of certain screens that capture certain information in a certain way might be exactly what you need to enhance how we're capturing certain information. So let's take a little look at an existing screen that we've already got in place, like for example the driving license screen. So this is one that I've already got created, and if we have a look at it, you can see it's quite a basic screen. You've just got a few basic fields there for license number, type, expiry date, and comments, and you can see they've got a few different field types in there. But let's say we wanted to do some adapting of this form, we could actually go a little bit further, add some fields, and there's no limit on how many fields we want to add or take away or rename. So everything can be completely customized to our own liking, and as you can see, field types are a wide range of options. So the information we capture can be captured however we need to capture it, and the options surrounding our field types, including making them mandatory information that they have to, if you're completing this screen, you have to provide. Is it privatized information, so it's hidden from a line manager? Or of course, going back before we're actually manipulating the fields, we can actually manage the complete universal access levels to the screen itself. So we can say for all our employees when accessing the screen for themselves, as it's accessible through their profiles, we can say can they fully update this, view it only, or simply not see it at all, and the same goes for line managers. So the flexibility not only goes to the contents that's captured within the screen, but also to who can interact with the screen. And that's just a pre-existing one. We can build a screen completely from scratch, from our own imagination, or it may even be from an existing templated form that we use within the business right now. So make it electronic, and many advantages will come, including the fact that people will be able to not only access this via their web browser and their profiles, but via their mobile devices on the go, anywhere they need to. And by interacting and capturing data through these screens, you're then being provided with more reportable information that you can get within an instant from your PeopleHR reporting functions, provide you further analytics of that data, or even give you, again, advantages such as being able to export and provide into payroll, or even just export and manage further within Excel. So really can potentially broaden and hopefully even improve, in some pain points for some of you guys if we're struggling or not finding there's an easy way to capture and manage data currently, as it may be in spreadsheet format or on paper forms or whatever it may be, or we may be scanning and uploading a great deal of documents when we could replicate those items by capturing it via a screen like this. So when we've designed the screen and we're happy with how we want it to look, we can then share it with a given group of people. So, driving license, for example, is a perfect example where maybe not everyone in the business we need to capture that detail for. So there's no need to clutter up their profiles with an unnecessary screen. So we can go in the driving license screen and we can look in the job role and we could simply choose driver if there were one. But we can completely narrow that down to wherever we see fit, or of course, if we know there's select names, and just like we've seen with a couple of features so far. So logbooks, utilizing them is a fantastic area. And if you want to see a little bit of logbooks in action in a profile, if we just go and visit an employee, we'll see that under any employee's profile, there is a logbook tab. And of course, if we've decided the relevant access levels for a logbook, it will decide whether an employee sees a certain screen available in the drop-down list here, or whether, of course, their line manager can. And of course, we as administrators have controlled all of it, so we can see, and you can see numerical values that instantly display if they've got any historic records. If we want to view those, if we want to interact with those, if we want to open up one of those forms and screens available for us to interact with, then here we go, we can see it in live action, and we can see that it just captures set data. Some things are essential, some things aren't, and we can even attach files against this area, essentially categorizing the documents that go against it. So a fantastic area, and will vastly, whether we use it to a minimum degree and only to capture little bits of extra information, or whether we use it to a very lengthy degree, like you can see my list here, it really doesn't matter. I think any amount of usage of the logbook will improve your HR experience. So we've spoken about logbooks, and as we mentioned, when it comes to additional employee information, we should also go back to our general settings to talk about the documents area, as this is a fantastic area to improve the information that's stored against employees' profiles. And specifically, we like to use these document templates because they are a great way to not only be able to store your documentations within PeopleHR, but also to have employee information automatically merged into your documents, as PeopleHR is, at the end of the day, a massive employee database that contains all of their rich details, and a document can then therefore be immediately populated in an instant with that information should you build your templates into here, which again I think we would imagine improves on the HR experience versus doing that manually. So if you're looking for a way to achieve this, then you can come here into your document settings, open up the document settings template area, and you can see there's just an option to create a new one. You can create as many as you see fit, and you can see there's actually a designer here. So if you want to build a document from scratch or bring your content in from somewhere external and manipulate it to match the format, then you absolutely can. And then from there, as we mentioned, you actually have the ability to mail merge employee details, which you can click into a little icon here at the top of the editor, gather up the list of employee merge tags, and using the appropriate tag will pull through that given information into the document, including obviously basic employee details, name, email and such, but going much further into their employment details, including potentially leaver details if need be, salary information including salary history, so looking at historic or future salaries, and even further when we look down at contents with even logbook details can be mail merged into here, as well as sick details and custom details from integrations. So it's a very rich list of mergeable information. I think even enough to do employment contracts, salary letters, and much richer. So just take the appropriate merge tag from the list, copy and paste it, or simply just type it in free text and place it in the document wherever you see fit. But as soon as you put that content in there, that will automatically publish that document with that employee's information wherever those tags are. And as you can see with templates, just as with standard uploads in the system, you can preset them to have e-signatures against them as well. So utilising this will, I imagine, save you a great deal of admin time rather than having to populate templates like contracts, salary letters, probation letters, etc. with manual details. So document templates, again, even utilising them to a slight degree will hopefully improve on your HR experience. Now, we've had a look at quite a lot of the key areas we said we would, and last but definitely not least, as we mentioned, we're just going to finish by having a little dive into the queries and reports area to make sure that we're aware of what's available through there, and if we're utilising it, it's going to improve on our HR experience. And of course, if you want to dive a little bit further into these areas individually, we have tons of online learning to help yourselves too. So, jumping a little bit quick there, but going across to the queries area, which is listed on the left-hand menu, available as standard to any administrators. And the queries area is something that, again, we may very well be aware of, but we may not be utilising it to its maximum potential. And I know that it can be a little bit daunting looking at designing custom reports, but trust me, I'm here to tell you that the Query Builder is completely straightforward, and it's very safe and easy to use. And simply just interacting with it, is something that we just should be doing on a regular basis as administrators if we're looking to get the reports that we need. So looking at the Query Builder, we can see it can gather up an infinite amount of queries labelled however you see fit, and once you've saved the query, it is there available for you to run whenever you want. So if I want to look at sickness this week, just click and give it a run. Helps if you have some data to look at, but yeah, sometimes these things aren't as populated as you like them to be. So let's have a look at something a little bit further back. There we go, absence last 12 months, and we can see we've got so much more information. We've got 210 records. I can now instantly export into a CSV and manipulate that data even further. So if we want to go and narrow that down, put it into other analytics, do whatever we need to do, or simply have it here so I can come back, and rerun it whenever I need to. It's stored, it's there, it's available, and I can interact with that whenever I need to. But of course, I actually set that up in the first place. So to put a report together and have it sitting in your list, all you got to do at some point, go into your plus icon, choose your areas you want to report on. So like I did in my sickness report, I went and had a look down the categories list, chose absences, and that gave me then all the options on my right hand side to then drill down and choose what sick information did I want to look at. and how detailed did I want this report to be? And the answer is there is no right or wrong answer, so it can contain as much or as little information as you see fit. And if you maybe want some other content in there as well, you want to look at other employee information to include, you want to report by department or location or job role, then you can absolutely go and include extras in your report. And the good thing is as well is you don't have to go to Excel to filter this data down. You should get to your results page with the exact data set you're looking for, because you can filter it all before you get there. So if you want to narrow this down, we hopefully will imagine that filters in here might be a little bit more straightforward for people if you've not been filtering via Excel previously. These might be a little bit more straightforward for you to simply start adopting. So if you want to filter on 6 start date, you can narrow that down to a very quick rolling 12-month period. We know how many sick triggers roll on a 12-month basis. And as well as that, we can of course see durations in there. So if we want to narrow that down and look for people by their triggers and look for people who's had a summer sickness greater than a certain value in the last 12 months, we could look at summers greater than 10 days or something along those lines, or we could simply just look at show me all the sickness in the last 12 months. So you've got so many flexible options within the query builder to find what you need. It might be a bit of trial and error if you're a bit new to this, but again, we've got tons of learning content online. So if you want to find a query that or a tutorial on queries or a specific report, you'll find that there's actually lots of learning guides that we've got for queries online. So if you want to drill down and even look at maybe some query training, we've got plenty of options available for you. So today obviously we're just exploring there and making guys aware of this, how flexible this queries tool is and how quickly you can get your hands on information, as you can see, like we just have. But it's also good to utilize it to whatever benefits you guys. So whether there's a couple of standard payroll reports you want to have sitting in your queries list, whether there's a couple of essential HR reports you've got for salaries or absence, or just employee history and looking for changes and things like that, upcoming levers, see if there's any actions that we're going to have to do, or even starters if we're going to initiate some onboarding. It's good to have all these queries at your fingertips, because then you're going to be able to get that information in the click of a button like we saw at the very beginning. And you're going to be able to even extract that information if you need to provide that to anywhere else or anyone else. Okay, so that was a little glimpse into queries. As I say, it might give you a little bit more interest, and I know that's an area a lot of people like to utilise heavily on a daily basis. So if you wish to find out more, please visit our help centre or speak to your support team. Now, diving across from there, having a look at the reports section, these are more standardized reports that you can share with the various audiences, but even of these standard reports, we find that there are some that you might find beneficial to share with certain groups. Specifically, these 2 reports I like to emphasize could be good to share on a manager level. Holiday Outlook simply gives you a little insight into upcoming holidays and if they're being utilized, which I know can be an issue for us to keep an eye on. Sometimes it's just not having the facilities available to see. I mean, even having a planner available and allowing us to see when holidays are happening might not always allow us to kind of get that wide scope of exactly how people are getting on with using up their balance, whereas this holiday Outlook report breaks that down very nicely for you. So as a manager, or even just as a HR admin across the board, you could see that nice and easily. So if you want to share that to managers, just click in the I symbol and you can see you've got the manager specific option, and it's that straightforward. Just as straightforward as that is the how absences affect our company option, which you can see there. It does what it says in the tin, but again, sharing with managers might allow them to see that for their teams year on year, and just even consider that into their general reviews and things like that, and see if there's trends or general common analytics to come off the back of that. However, the rest of these reports are all, as I say, standardized reports, so nothing to take away from you as an administrator. Having a little look through these reports, seeing what use they are to you, and having a little dive into that little I symbol if you want to share that with anybody wider than the HR audience. Now, that was just a little exploration of some of the features that, again, we wish to give you a little bit more information about, so that you can enhance your HR experience, and whether it's just taking a little bit of some of these features today and adopting them into your day-to-day to improve items, small items, that's absolutely fine, and that's exactly what we wanted to achieve. But obviously what would be great is if some of you guys can even explore some of these, quite a few of these things, because I think doing so and optimizing utilage of all these things is really going to combine into the best HR experience. And again, utilizing each of these things to how it suits you, whether it's simply taking elements of what we've talked about today and taking those and applying those where needs be, or whether it's literally, adopting these things in their entirety with flexible features that we've seen, like logbooks, like queries, and whatever it may be. But that just about wraps up all the items that we wanted to talk about today. So I would just like to very quickly look back at our list that we set out to look at the very beginning. And as we can see, we've looked at all of these items individually now, and this is the first of many webinars to come, so we will appreciate your guys' feedback and be keeping the topics coming in the near future as well. And we hope that now that we've had a little look at the communication resources features, we've seen some options in there that widen the scope slightly for us when we think about how we communicate with employees through the system, as well as the resources that are available to them through there to really improve their self-service. We've had a look at the leave and absence side of things, so we've seen some options that broaden the types of leave and events that we're able to capture and report on through the system, as well as ways in which sickness can be managed from light and informal and simply just meets our flexible needs, or a little bit more rigid, verified, and with some natural workflow built into it. And on the back of that, we talked about obviously the flexibility of authorization rules and how they can support our natural day-to-day authorizations. So following that, we'll have a little dive. We had a little dive into the time and attendance section, and we looked at tap in, tap out, and how that can be enabled so that people can clock in and out on their mobile devices. And we looked at geofence and QR code clock-ins, and how they can be applied to, again, almost enhance that experience of mobile clocking in. We actually looked at a little bit extra in there as well, because we looked at how to configure assignments so that people can not only clock in, but also allocate their working hours to an appropriate item if they need to, rather than just their standard working hours. Then we had a little dive and look at the additional employee information. So we've looked at logbooks, how we could potentially implement even small amounts of logbooks into the day-to-day to capture some additional info, whether that's, some standard things like driving licenses and one-to-ones and, general areas to capture information in a more preset way, or whether we want to, utilize that for a wide variety of quite rich screens that have a lot of, specific detail that we need to capture as part of our essential processes. Their logbooks make that entirely electronic, makes that entirely reportable, and like with a few features we've mentioned so far, makes that available for mobile users. And we dived in and had a look at document templates, which naturally gives us the ability to hold that data within PeopleHR, automatically mail merge from the wide database of information that PeopleHR holds for our employees, taking away potentially a lot of admin time around setting up rich documents full of employee information, like contracts, like salary letters, and many, many more. And last but not least, we had a little look at reporting so that we could see what options we've got for being able to quickly access and get our hands on key information within PeopleHR quickly and easily and flexibly if we need specific information reported on. As well as we looked at some standard reports that are already there and available for us in an instant to be able to share with potential groups like line managers or even potentially director groups, depending on what you get out of looking at those reports. So, a fair few different items in there, and again, thank you for tuning in for any of this if you've taken the time out of your day to join in. Hopefully some, if not multiple items on today's session have given you insight and potentially some things to, as we aim to by the title, get a bit more or the most out of your essential HR within your platform. So yeah, once again, thank you to everybody who's taken a little bit of time out, and we look forward to hopefully seeing you in the next one. Cheers.
Amazing, thank you, Adam. As I said earlier on, any questions that you've asked during this webinar will be answered via email post-webinar. There will be a survey that comes up on screen at the end of this webinar. It will ask for likeliness to recommend the webinar and likeliness to recommend access overall. We measure it from 0 to 10, so 0 to 6 is unlikely to recommend, 7 and 8 is neither likely or unlikely to recommend, and 9 and 10 is likely to recommend. It will also ask for any future webinar suggestions and any other feedback. We would really appreciate it if you could please complete that, because it will allow us to understand what you liked about this webinar and what you didn't, and then also what content you'd like us to cover in the future. As to our next webinars, we don't yet have the date of this one confirmed, but as soon as we do, we'll send some invitations out for you to get registered. And that's it from us. As Adam said, thank you very much for attending and taking the time out of your day. We really appreciate it, and we hope to see you all at our next webinar. Thank you very much, everyone.